But here's just a very quick snapshot into some of the broader ethics of using AI. There are a few ethical challenges that need to be considered, from social, political, economic, environmental concerns. One is misinformation. So that is knowing that the information that we read is accurate and unbiased. A challenge of the widespread use of AI in society might be that it becomes harder and harder to judge what is real and what is true knowledge. Many of us will remember a photo that circulated in the early days of AI really exploding, was a picture of the Pope wearing a puffer jacket. It looked very convincing, it looked very realistic, but that was actually generated by AI. So from now on, every image that we see and every piece of text that we see, and soon every video that we see, we will need to really look at it and really think deeply around, is that generated by AI or is that actually a factual representation of the world? Transparency and explainability is also a challenge of generative AI. Because AI we can't really explain why AI generates the content that it generates, it can be hard to interrogate the process that it goes through. So for example, if AI systems are used to make hiring decisions and picking the right candidate for a job, what we really want is for that system to be explainable. We want to be able to see why it made the decisions that it made, to make sure that it's not discriminating against people and that it's not biased and that it's making good decisions. And also the transparency of whether someone has used AI is also a big ethical challenge. And that's why we really emphasize the importance of acknowledging when you've used AI and citing your use of it so that you can be transparent that, yes, this material was created with the assistance of AI. Intellectual property and copyright is also a big ethical challenge. So that's both the ethics of actually pulling in other people's material to train AI systems. So there are artists whose art is being used to train AI systems, which are then create images which potentially could have those original artists lose out on work. That's a big ethical challenge and a big social argument and legal argument happening at the moment around how that should be addressed. This is far too big of a topic to go into really any detail right here, but this is an ethical challenge that needs to be you need to be aware of and you need to think about. Discrimination and bias is another one. We've covered that in a little bit detail already. And AI and human labor is obviously a big one. That's both AI potentially replacing humans in their jobs. That's an ethical consideration that we need to make and see where that is appropriate, where that is not appropriate, and what do we do about that socially and politically. But also the human labor that goes into actually creating these AI models in the first place. So many of these models are actually trained using human labor, in that some of these data sets that are used to train the machine learning algorithms are manually labeled by people. So when we're looking at whether a photo is of a cat, many of those photos have been manually labeled by people over years, say which ones are photos of cats, which ones are not photos of cats, so that the AI system can identify the patterns. So there's a huge ethical challenge of many of these people doing that kind of manual tagging work are people working on very low wages all around the world to do that work for companies that then make large profits from selling access to their AI models. So that's another ethical challenge. And finally, environmental challenges is a big one. It takes a lot of energy and computational power and a lot of electricity to actually train AI models and to then run them. And also, they use a lot of water in cooling and various other kinds of minerals and resources that go into actually allowing these tools to work. And so we need to think about whether the amount of the environmental impact of these tools is actually worth it, and how we can make it more efficient so that we can get some of the benefits of this technology in a way that doesn't hurt the environment. And also that when we're thinking about whether to use AI in the first place, we need to think about whether the way that we're using AI is actually worth it, considering the amount of environmental impact we may have from our use of AI. So for example, the very slight benefit that we get from using AI to write a blog post, for example, perhaps the environmental impact of that outweighs us just sitting there and putting an extra 30 minutes of work into doing it ourselves. These are just considerations we need to make. And again, those discussions are much broader and more complicated than I can really address in this masterclass.